Welcome to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles panel with our special turtle guests. We got Turtles co-creator, Kevin Eastman. We've got current TMNT writer and artist, Sophie Campbell.
Hey.
And we've got Rise of the TMNT artist, Chad Thomas. Welcome, everyone.
Hi there.
And I'm your moderator, Caleb Goellner, sometimes Turtles writer across a couple books. Everybody's going to be drawing some kind of custom original Turtles art while I ask them questions. I'm going to try not to make them talk too much. We're going to be kind of going down the line with some questions as everybody lets me distract them. The big deal, of course, this year, or how long has Turtles 100 been out? That's a question for the guests. Did it come out last year?
Yeah, the Turtles 100 came out in December of last year, so it was a short 9-year plus run with an incredible amount of absolutely fantastic artists that helped us get through it all, and it was 100 wonderful Tom Waltz scripts. But man, what an accomplishment, having been involved in the Turtles as long as I have. But to see one basically continuous story run, this multiple arcs within this one solid run, is what I refer to it these days as kind of the definitive Turtle run, because it really does. It created a whole new universe. I call it the IDW universe, where it sort of picked from multiple universes that we all love of Turtles, from Archie to the original Black and Whites to so many others. He created a new foundation to tell these stories, to not only bring in our favorite existing characters, twist them, tweak them a little bit, as well as bring in so many new characters that we could add to the storyline and expand the toy line, or do a little reinvention, a little retweaking on them. So, but yeah, 100 issues. Screen keeps going crazy. There we go.
That is huge, because as we all know, as comic book people, almost nothing does that anymore. Almost nothing. So it is huge. And speaking, Kevin, you mentioned, kind of recreating or modifying like some of the characters from different universes, but we have the biggest kind of story from Turtles 100 is, of course, the brand new character, Jennika, which is why I wore a yellow hat today. I guess I could have said April O'Neil, but the jumpsuit's been gone for a while. So I want to hear about Jennika. I want to hear kind of who was like sort of the driving force behind Jennika. And of course, Sophie, I want to hear your take on what Jennika brings to the team. How this is like something that's all new to the Turtles universe, but it's of course informed by somebody who's been with the Turtles for a long time. Tell us about Jennika.
Well, if you like, I can kick it off, because it was really I'm the guy that brought Venus de Milo into the world, and fans hated me for it and still hate that I've always been
Venus is cool. Venus it was just a question of timing and maybe a few execution things. I think the idea and the intent was pure.
Yeah, no, and it was. It came from a spot where we all love our Sarah Connors or Lieutenant Ripley's, or just strong female characters in general. I grew up with 3 sisters and a very strong-willed mom, basically a single parent. And so I really appreciate that, and how important they can be to a full team of heroes and characters and in general. And so after Venus, when Tom and I were going through the multiple arcs and the things that we wanted to do within the series, as the series sort of evolved, we had mentioned a couple times, when are we going to find an opportunity to bring in a female turtle? It's got to be right, because so much of the IDW universe, the IDW storytelling process was, story first. Things weren't done for, hey, let's kill off a character to up sales or bring attention to the book, or let's do this. It was always sort of navigated very organically and passionately through the appropriate story arcs that was sort of helping. They were guiding us as much as we were trying to guide it. So when the character of Jenica was introduced in 51, we designed her as a character that would probably not be there that long, as a foot assassin and all that stuff would be great. And then she became very popular with fans really quickly. And as her character evolved, we really started and wanted to include her into the family. And that was where the seed of, maybe sort of through one of those magic of comic book science, infusion things like the She-Hulk, maybe there's an opportunity we could look at doing something like that and bring Jenica in as the girl turtle, as our finally getting a female turtle. And I'm pretty sure that's when Tom and Sophie started talking about, because Sophie's brought so many wonderful ideas to the turtle universe.
Thank you.
Besides your writing and besides your fantastic artwork and all the things, so many things you've added to. So many of you people that are all half my age, you all draw better than I do, and I love you and hate you. But you did that first concept. You did that first concept drawing, and when Tom showed me that, I basically fell off my chair. And that was we were just. I think we didn't change a thing. It was like that was you. That was Jenica. You brought her to life.
So if you have to talk about everything now.
I was pretty like I remember when Tom came to me, it was like, God, it feels like forever ago. It was so long ago at this point. But it was one of those things where he's like, hey, I think for the pitch meeting,
Is that Tom's
with
voice?
like, yes.
Okay.
Like, you need something for the pitch meeting. And I was like, oh God, that's like extra pressure. It's not just like designing a character who's slated to appear. It was like, I have to come up with this character who's going to like, convince them that it's cool. And, convincing people is always hard and scary. And I remember like, I did the designs pretty quick. I knew exactly what she should look like. That part was easy. But then, waiting for, because like I didn't take part in the pitch meeting. So like I was just kind of pacing, like waiting to hear back from Tom. Like, oh God, are they going to hate it? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, it worked out.
It sounds like they didn't hate it and it went well.
Yeah,
that's
definitely
what it
went well.
It's good.
But I tend to assume the worst. So I was still like, it's not gonna, they're gonna hate it.
I think you're in good company in that, Sophie. We all assume the worst, and we always, at least for me, I hate every drawing I ever do until 6 months later. Oh, that one's not so bad. But I think bringing in some of the change and things, especially where we've had such a wonderful and loyal fan base for the series for so long, and I know Nickelodeon, is very precious about that, and they give us a lot of room to do a lot of things that we wanted to do, and we can fight for the things we want. But I think they were nervous because I think the stigma of Venus had them a little concerned, and I think Bobby had some reservations because he also was really super. He's such a wonderfully creative and talented editor and writer, and now Eisner nominated writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yay, Bobby. But but no, so I think it was just he felt it just had to be handled just right, and I think all the things lined up like a perfect storm. The design was beautiful. The character was somebody that Turtle fans were already very fond of. The story, was well executed by Tom, and that it made sense as how it connected. So it wasn't fudged or forced, in my opinion. And we just did the same thing you did, Sophie, is we crossed our fingers and hoped that the fans respond to it the way that we did it, and they did. So
that's something I noticed about Turtles fandom in general. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's one of the healthier, if not healthiest, fandoms. I think we've all worked on different stuff and maybe different license books, and some fandoms are a little different than others
Yes.
as far as being welcome to newness, I would say, as a concept. But I think one of the strengths of the Turtles, just kind of like as an idea, is a group of characters, as a whatever you want to call it, is that they do allow for a lot of like mutations. I think people aren't necessarily just trained to accept it because there's so many different versions. I think in a lot of cases they welcome stuff because that's just kind of the nature of what's going on with the Turtles. That's a segue because now I want to let Chad talk about his work on Rise of the TMNT.
Yeah,
Chad,
talk about reinvention.
that was a reinvention. I know that did take a moment for some people to kind of chew on and see what it was all about. You've been drawing. You've done a couple storylines. Of course, we worked together in the past on previous animated Turtles books.
We got to work on the 2012 animated comic for a little bit, and I got to do work on like 2 different versions, which has been pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, from like your perspective, you've had to draw like these these different character models because you totally redesigned. Who's your favorite character to draw from the new series?
Oh man, I think my favorite would probably be Raph and Donatello. Either or, just depends on probably what's happening on the page, and I just like those designs a lot. Like I just like that big. I like that snaggletooth that Raph's got and his spiked shell, just like his size comparison to everybody else. And like I said this about the 2012 version too. It's like I loved how when you could see those turtles in silhouette, I was like, oh, I know who those are, and that was like just taken to the max with the new Rise of the TMNT, where they're just so varied and so different. And like you said, like they're like the turtles. They just really lend themselves to like reinvention and doing something new. And it's why the IDW book is so great. It's because it's always like picking and pulling from all this wonderful lore from, the 35 years that Turtles been around, that there's just so much history to kind of get to play with and mess with and pull from here. And just, it's a really fun little melting pot. And so it's neat to have been able to be a part of Rise, where they're really just taking that and creating something really new and really different. And just it was really fun to work on. Yeah.
Is there a character or characters that are super hard for you to draw and you wonder why you were even born?
My least favorite character to draw was on the 2012 book. It was the Krang Prime design, where it would just constantly like grow into like just little needle, like just different limbs, but they were all real small, and that was not fun to draw. I had to draw it once, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this again.
If you draw digitally, you zoom in and you get lost. It's like a maze. The hardest part
with Rise, though, is that it's such an incredibly like kinetic and like high energy show that lends itself so wonderfully to animation and the way it's animated. The animators are just it's second to none. It's so awesome to watch.
It's like anime.
Yeah, and so doing that in a book, I was like, man, I'm just not doing this like Andy's designs justice. Like I should be pulling and stretching these characters even further, just because what I've seen them do in the show, like they just take those characters and just do the craziest stuff with them. I'm like, oh man, I gotta figure out how do I incorporate that more. Every single issue I would try to I'd watch the show, I'd have it pulled up next to me and just like watch like a fight scene or like how they would move or how they just the foreshortening, how they'd stretch on the screen, be like, how can I do this better? I don't know if I ever quite got it, but it's always a challenge, but it's one I strive to meet. I try.
Would you say you would work to rise to that challenge?
Yikes.
Boo. Edit that out. Edit that out.
It's there. It's there.
We'll do a quick cut. It's fine.
Funny. I want to add
So-
in what's interesting is when I look back at around the time that we were starting with the IDW Turtle Universe and what Tom had come in with a brainstorm, I had known Ciro Neely before he was brought in to do the 2012 series, which was approached in the very same fashion in so many ways to what the IDW series was, is that they really pick and chose so many things from so many different Turtle universes and created this new platform to tell the stories from, which makes it so wonderful and unique. And I remember every time there's been a new version of Turtles, even when they showed the first trailer and the first teaser art for the 2012 series, fans were up in arms. They were like, "Oh no, you're stealing my childhood. This is never gonna work. Oh, it's the end of the Turtles." And then they watch the episode and it's like, "Oh, that's pretty good." And when they and I love, I wrote a couple episodes. I did the voice of one of the characters and had so much fun on that series, much like so much fun I've had on the IDW series. And when it came to Evolve 2, and I had met Ant and Andy from the work that they did on the 2012 series, which was fantastic. And so Tom and I joined them for a while to help create the platform of what would be Rise of the Turtles, which I think the designs were not only fantastic, I love that they wanted younger and try a different take. This whole, they really fell in love with the Big Trouble in Little China concept, which is an important part of my original series. I mean, I don't write, Casey Jones unless I'm thinking what Jack Burton would do. So I like the take that they chose for the series and try and stretch some new things. They always sort of, in any version of the Turtle that's worked, even back to the 2000 series that Pete did so wonderfully, the animated series, it was important to keep the heart and soul, and that's always, I think, what was first and foremost, not only in the IDW series but in the 2012 animated series and Rise, which is such a fun and series, and I adore the toys. Of course, they're all nice too. But yeah, it's a challenge, and and that you think of that segue into what Tom and so many artists, Tom and I and Bobby did, and so many artists that did on issue up to issue 100. I felt the redirect, and I want to, it's not fair to say it's a redirect, but sort of the story arc that Sophie chose to join, which I thought was just absolutely fantastic, because it really took it to a whole wonderful family, homey sort of, desperation and feelings and dealing with the aftermath of such a great catastrophe. And so I like it's like, it may seem small on the one hand, but the issues in it are big. And of course, so I've been enjoying the post 100 series. Has been absolutely fantastic. I adore it.
Thank you.
That's one thing I wanted to ask everybody about. Kind of historically, like the way I've always thought about the story of the Turtles is that you can tell it forever. The only real ending is when the Turtles can come out of the sewer and be kind of like accepted in society, Earth society, human society, whatever it is. But that's not happening this time. So that's pretty cool. And I wanted to know kind of where the headspace is about, like, how do you bring the Turtles out of the sewer in like a totally changed world? Like, where does the story go from there? Like, what kind of issues do they have? Are any of those issues present in our own society? Like, what's your take on kind of the post-sewer Turtles?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. This is all you, Sophie. Go.
Okay. Sorry, I'm drawing pepperoni and I got slightly absorbed.
It was my fault. It was my fault.
Well, I think, like, to me it seemed pretty obvious, like, where it should go, because, like, not the Turtles aren't just out of the sewer and, like, like living in normal society, because it's not normal society. It's it's mutant town, and I felt like like, what would happen if all of a sudden all these people who don't have everything in common, but have a lot of things in common, are all shoved together in a place where they can't leave. I kind of, I have the turtles have like their secret passage in and out of Mutant Town, but most people, they can't leave. They're just stuck in there, and their entire lives have been completely upended and kind of, destroyed by becoming a mutant. And I felt like, the two like ways to go would either be everybody just starts fighting, or people, the mutants, they kind of come together and, make a society and like make a culture. And I felt like that was much more interesting than everybody fighting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some fighting obviously with like different factions and stuff, but like I felt like the turtles being at ground zero of, all these new mutants creating a culture would be the most interesting way to go. And just like it's it's like the turtles not just joining society, but helping to like create society. And that's kind of like the main like concept I started off with when I took
Sure.
over.
Where do you think Jenica fits into the story as far as being, she's a Ninja Turtle, of course, but there's been like this thread kind of throughout the book, especially the past several years. More and more humans are becoming mutants.
Yeah.
Instead of, like the turtles, they start as animals to become like humanoid animals. And there's been some conversations between characters, like, what does it mean if you come from animal or human and we kind of all meet in the middle as this sort of new life form on the planet? Jenica seems very well adjusted to it. But like, where's your headspace at with like how Jenica fits into, she's sort of like a new turtle for a new world. She's kind of like an ambassador.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of, I don't know if it's totally intentionally, but like blurs a little bit between like animal mutants and human mutants, because like, like obviously most of them are human mutants at this point.
Right.
But like, when do you like, as far as like their society goes, like when does it stop mattering? The difference. Like it's it's going to matter to some people, because obviously the turtles didn't have their lives like, I mean, they did have their lives like kind of taken away.
Yeah, I always think of old Hob when I go down this, because I'm like, Hobbs' origin story, I can't even look at it because I hate seeing animals get treated poorly, like pets.
Terrible. So. Yeah, and like, that's some of the stuff I've thought about. Like I have, I can't get into too many spoilers, I guess, but like I have this kind of like activist character coming up, and he is like Hob, he's not fit to govern them because he never had a human life like taken away from him, so he doesn't have that touchstone. But then I start thinking about like, well, he did kind of have a life taken away. It just wasn't the same kind of life.
Yeah, he wasn't like an accountant.
Right. Yeah, and like, I kind of feel like, I'm sure Hob maybe wishes he could just go back to being a cat and have somebody just like pet him all day. I
do.
Yeah,
I want to be Garfield.
Same.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of the, I don't know if Jenica is like an ambassador, really.
I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but she's got a cool point of view, I think, because she spent a lot of time with, the turtles before any of her metamorphosis kind of happened as a person and as like a new turtle. So
yeah,
she's like the ultimate viewpoint character for the series, I think, as a whole.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I decided to do it. she's kind of bridges the gap between the two. And she has like, she's got a lot more like streetwise than the Turtles, because like, she grew up as kind of like a petty criminal, and she knows how people work much more than the Turtles do. So I kind of feel like as much as I would love to do an entire series about like being mutated, it doesn't quite work. You can't really spend that much time doing that, for like an entire storyline in like a Turtles book, really. But like,
that sounds like a mini-series pitch. Let's get Bobby on the phone.
But like, God, I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, that's okay, because I can steer us into a new direction, and you can pick up on that thought if you find it.
I kind of derailed myself with like the body horror thing.
That's okay. We've all thought about it when we see the mutations happen. We all think of like, The Fly and like stuff like that.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, do I want to do like, a scene where, Jennica realizes she, can't brush her teeth anymore because her fingers are too big and fat, or because she has turtle fingers.
She's got a shell that she's gonna have to wash with like, a little back scratcher thing her whole life now.
Yeah, this is all this is stuff I've definitely thought about, but like, I kind of like throw nods to it, like, I don't remember which issue it was in, but I had Jennica talk about how she has to like get used to her big turtle fingers. And I have some stuff coming up where she gives up on playing music because her fingers are too big and stuff like that. Because like, how do you play a guitar when you get these big square turtle fingers?
Well, I don't know, but this action figure might, because like he's got a guitar. He's got to work on it. It's cool. It's cool.
And, like, I remember, this is like totally unrelated, but I remember when the Coming Out of Their Shells tour thing was happening.
Oh,
man.
They had this whole thing where like Donatello, he had like a 1-string bass, and like even when I was like 10 years old or whatever, I was like, how does that work? But like, it could be something like that where you just have one. He's got
like a pitch shifter switch like on a synth, like somewhere on the bass body. I don't know.
Cool.
No, I was gonna say what's interesting is what you're talking about, the relationship of human mutant versus animal mutant, because that's something that Tom and I talked about and explored a lot of different ways through the issues, especially as it related to Old Hob, because we wanted Old Hob, as he was building out his army, even like Bebop and Rocksteady, which were human to mutant, he didn't want them as part of his group. It was human to mutant animals were, no, you're not pure. And then he would only do with animals that became, mutated into human form. But as he expanded his position and stature and wanting to take over more power, the idea that it was worth it to him to take mutants wherever he got them. In fact, that I think, the bigger idea, because at one point as we're heading towards issue 100, that the bomb that was going to mutate all those people was going to mutate most of New York. And then we sort of went like, whoa, maybe that's too much. So
that's the end. That's the end of the story.
That's what I wanted to happen. Yeah, like I wanted it to be all of Manhattan and have it be like an Escape from New York kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
That would have been great.
Guys, I don't want to break up this fight, but I want to see what y'all been drawing. If you wouldn't mind sharing your screens.
I got a screen.
I want to see this pepperoni.
How do I do that again? Oh, here it is. God, I'm so inept. That looks great, Kevin. Can I have it?
Oh my gosh.
I saved the weasels cover.
So cool. Oh my god, the Jennica's
I want
so
the
gorgeous.
weasels.
No,
I
you
want the
promised
weasel.
you promised
Oh my
we'd
gosh,
trade
I love
on
that, Jenica.
just for you. Would do a drawing trade at some point. So.
Yes, I will totally draw something for you on paper. Anyway, but yeah, okay. So here's the pepperoni I was working on.
Yay!
There
I
we
love
go.
pepperoni.
Yay! Oh, we
You
love
know,
Jenica
I-
is so great. Oh my gosh.
I didn't know it was going to be a capital P pepperoni. I didn't know if you were
Oh.
drawing some pizza.
Well, if
And
it
you're
was a
like, yeah, I
regular,
gotta get that
I assumed
texture.
I was
there you go. There's a regular pepperoni.
Thank you. Feel so much
All right.
better now. Kevin, you are working on Raph and Casey.
Yep. Ralph and
And-
Casey.
Yeah, it looks great.
Sophie,
Thank you.
I don't know whose screen I'm looking at, but it looks like you're drawing Jenica.
Yeah.
And Chad, you are drawing,
I got a Donatello
you got a
incoming.
Donatello.
Whenever you want to see it. Yep.
Love it.
Get this
Yeah, I
Thank
like
right.
it.
you.
I love that. I love the series anyway. You work on the series, but I love just the concept, especially Donatello, of having this soft shell and being able to put on different shell.
Yeah, I love all his different shells and all the different things. Like I remember that was what I said to Matt Manning, the writer who did the last miniseries we did. I was like, can we do the spider shell, please? I really wanted to draw all like the spider leg shell and all his all the grabbers and stuff like that. So I got to draw one other shell by the end of the book, which was really fun. But yeah, I really like these Donnie. I like how they're all different turtles, and I think that's just a really fun addition to the series.
No, I'm like an action figure person. I actually like toys a lot. So when I found out about the soft shell, I was like, I'm gonna buy like 6 of these Donnies. There's gonna be a lot of Donnies. That's genius. I ain't mad. That's fine.
Love it.
Okay, so
Big fan of the action figures as well, and I thought the action figures for the Rise are just so much fun. I love the big tank and the different, the big characters. And I love Splinter in this series. He's like, angry little, imagine like one of was that anime series called The Yamadas, which was really wacky.
Yeah.
Just had a great classic anime, sort of like, leave me alone. You kind of.
Yeah, he's like anime Danny DeVito kind of.
Yeah.
Like.
And because the 2012 Splinter is my favorite Splinter, and so I was kind of like, oh man, I'm really gonna miss drawing like this. Really, I loved how tall he was. I liked that he was really more of a dad than kind of like really old with I really liked that version of him. But drawing the Rise Splinter was a blast. Like that was one that I really grew to love drawing, because I think the 2012 Splinter, while it was one of my favorite versions of the character, or is my favorite version of the character, I always found him a lot tougher to kind of get his facial features and his fur, how just kind of shade in and out, and but the the Rise one is just a blast to draw. He's just so animated and
that was one of my favorite. I love both Splinter. Yeah, I love a lot of the different versions of the Splinter, just because you can really get a different look at the character. I was really enamored with the 2012 series, because it was all the things that you said. In fact, one of the episodes I think one of the few I actually fully wrote myself was the Lone Rat and Cubs, which was with the Tales of the Turtles.
Yeah.
Where you just after they had mutated these, because I had the idea, Ciro and Brandon and I were talking about different ideas, and something I had an idea of something I wanted to write based on Lone Wolf and Cub, that famous Japanese live action series where Toshiro Mifune is pushing the baby around in the shop in the wooden cart. And so I said, what if right after they mutated, it's Splinter just getting to know the turtles and becoming the dad of the turtles, putting them around in a shopping cart, trying to escape time. So much fun with that.
Only his shopping cart didn't have a Civil War era machine gun in it. It's a beautiful thing.
I don't have questions, but I do want to say, I want to take the opportunity, because this is technically the first time I'm meeting Kevin, is to really say thank you. Like, I remember watching Turtles when I mean, I'm sure you hear stories like this all the time, but I remember sitting down and watching the show when it first came out when I was like 7 years old. And like, I just knew, like, then and there, I was like, I love these guys. I want to know more about them. And my mom went out and bought a bunch of Archie comics. And I remember the specific one I got, and I read it, and it was really with that comic right then and there that I was like, I want to draw comic books when I get older. Like, when I was 7 years old, I just knew. And so I owe my career to Kevin and the Turtles, and just being able to do this, and have been knowing that I wanted to do it at 7, and that I wanted to draw like the all ages Turtles. I was very specific about that. I wanted to draw like the Archie cartoon Turtles. And I, having gotten to do that in 2 iterations of it, has been awesome. And I thank you for creating something so everlasting that I got to be a part of, that encouraged me when I was a kid and got me where I am. So thanks.
Let me respond, because it's, I can't tell you how often I hear that and how incredibly appreciative I am, because it is one of those things that's almost word for word what I said to Jack Kirby the first time I met him. He was one of those guys that, like, when I read Jack Kirby comics, especially, it was my favorite, Jack Kirby's Commandy, when I was like 9 years old, and that's it. I never wanted to be anything else but a cartoonist. I drove my parents nuts, And so when I told him that, and he just smiled and just said, all right, it's up to you. You take the ball further down the court. So how nice he was to me in his response, and we got to know each other more over the years. And he was always so encouraging, and I would just sit there and stare at him, and like, I think it would annoy him, because I was just so grateful. He's the one that lit that spark in me, and he did it. So when somebody says that to me, I can't tell you how overwhelmingly emotional and awesome it is. So I really do appreciate it, because however you got there is the most important thing. So I do thank you. And I also like to thank you, Mom, because all those comics and toys she bought, you did a great job.
I still have them. They're like, I got all my old Ninja Turtle toys. They're on that side of the room. I got a bunch of old Archie comics and old TMNT comics, and the new ones upstairs. Like, yeah. So yeah, they were a huge part of pushing me into the career that I wanted to pursue. And it's, like I said, it's just been so cool to be a part of them, and to finally get to say that to you, even through Zoom.
I'm sure I have had the good fortune to meet Sophie once, and we still have your Michelangelo is hanging in our bedroom. My wife and I, we love that.
Oh, that's awesome.
I traded you that Casey Raphael page for that. But anyway, that was
yeah, I still got that too.
Yeah, but that's and I say, and I want you to speak if you want, Sophie, too, but I just want to say that that's been one of my greatest joys of being part of the IDW universe, is so many of you young people that were inspired, however you were inspired, and many inspired by the Turtles. And then that gives me so much incredible energy to work with guys like, like Tom and Bobby, and so many of the awesome writers that bring stuff to the table, but the artists that bring those stories to light and complete that vision, plus add their own love and passion and things that they want their Turtles to be like, is just truly inspiring. And so I'm continually blessed and so appreciative. So I love working with you all.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, my story is pretty much the same as Chad's, except the old Mirage comics, and I just wanted to draw the Turtles crying and murdering people. That's kind of what I got to do, minus the murder.
It's not too late. You are the writer.
I know.
We gotta get some approvals on that. But I'm gonna say a few things while we're wrapping up. But could we get a look at everybody, like kind of where they're at right now?
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna just throw in. I love these are two of my favorite. Because Casey was the second human character ever added to the Turtle universe, and I love teaming him up with Raphael, because they would do it like Sophie would want it. They'd go out and murder people. No, they would.
Well, that's what I want.
Sophie, do you want to give us a look at where you're at?
Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
That's so cool.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Thanks.
So awesome.
And last, and definitely not least,
Yes.
Chad, would you like to share?
Yes, yes. Let's see.
Love it.
I'm loving it. And
I haven't had to draw
anything.
Donnie for a while. That was fun. That was good to stretch my legs.
Stretch your shell. Stretch your shell, soft shell. Okay, well, everyone, thank you so much